Let's go ahead to the Washington Post. Lots of Washington Post in the show
Yes.
today. Unfortunately for them, I guess fortunately for us, we wanted to follow up here on that Amber Heard op-ed in the Washington Post, which really does matter from a media perspective. If we consider the circumstances, Amber Heard promised a $3.5 million donation. And I say promise because she never actually ended up paying up to the ACLU. Now, the American Civil Liberties Union. Now, the ACLU then ghost wrote an op-ed for her and placed it in the Washington Post using their connections, in which they portrayed Amber Heard as a victim of domestic abuse. That was eventually found to be the defamatory claim by the jury in the Depp versus Heard trial, where they found that Amber Heard, and really by proxy the ACLU, did defame Johnny Depp in that op-ed. And really, it's clear that Amber Heard was doing all of this for social clout to try and paint herself as a victim. Now, a lot has been made here of Depp and Heard and the circumstances, but not a lot has been made here about the Washington Post, which eventually found itself as a patsy by being played by the ACLU and printing what a jury in Virginia has now found to be a defamatory claim. So let's put this up there on the screen. Their own media critic, Eric Wemple, actually criticized the paper for publishing that op-ed by the ACLU, and he asked his bosses for comment, since, you know, a jury in a court of law found it defamatory. Here was their response: "We do not take stands on the opinions shared in our op-ed page." Okay, so the opinion page, which curates opinion and makes a actual decision every time they solicit an op-ed or accept an op-ed or publish an op-ed, they take a stand by elevating that opinion, says we don't take stands on opinions that are shared in our op-ed. I mean, you would think, no, that at the very least, an editor's note should be added to the op-ed, that maybe a retraction or some sort of explanation should be given.
How about this one? They just suspended without pay Dave Weigel for some dumb retweet.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, how about
who's the person who accepted
greenlit this? How about the editor who was involved with this?
That's
They're
a great
good.
point.
They're good. They completely failed at their job and allowed a defamatory, illegal op-ed to be posted in the pages of the Washington Post. But they're good to go.
Yes.
God forbid you do a wrong retweet, then there must be hell to pay.
I mean, if you read in this too, Eric Wemple, to his own credit, is scathing.
He goes in here.
Yeah, he just points out, he's like, this was a terrible op-ed. It embraces all the cliches of op-ed design.
He said it was an assault on journalism.
Deploying public figures to braid their personal experiences with policy prescriptions. Reads the piece's opening. "I was exposed to abuse at a very young age. I knew certain things early on without ever having to be told. At a certain point in her adult life," the op-ed states, "Heard's familiarity with these things deepened. Not once did the op-ed mention Depp's name, and the Post was not a defendant in Depp's libel suit." But what they point to here is that through the author's strategy and through this promised, this promised donation, in which, by the way, the ACLU didn't just say that they were going to place this op-ed for her. They made her a, quote, ambassador for women's rights with a focus on gender-based violence. This is reputational laundering. It's money laundering, almost, in a way. They want to bolster Amber Heard's career in Hollywood and her image as a victim. And by branding her an ACLU ambassador, all you have to do is not even pay. You have to promise to pay $3.5 million, of which your rich boyfriends and ex-husbands are the ones who eventually end up making whole, which I actually think is, pretty sexist and validating in terms of the critiques against her. Now, when we exactly see, the ACLU, whenever they're pressed, says this in response: "As with many advocacy organizations, the ACLU often submits pieces written by a range of external advocates and leaders in support of urgent policy priorities. It's routine for them to submit written pieces in our collaboration with, quote, artist ambassadors and other high-profile individuals who support our work." But again, we continue to point to this fact, which is that a jury in Northern Virginia, Fairfax, Virginia, where the Post servers are located, found this to be a defamatory op-ed. There has not been any statement yet by the Washington Post about how it will continue to solicit op-eds, about whether they, find it troubling that the defamatory claim was published within their newspaper. And I honestly think worse for them is that they don't even feel the need or public pressure by the media to say, hey, what's going on
What happened here?
What are your internal processes to make sure that this stuff, do you vet things that people say in your paper? Because if not, that's a problem. That's a serious problem.
I thought WaPo made a really good point here, which is, he writes, they were taking a shortcut to this controversy, foregoing the journalistic effort required to piece together a bona fide #MeToo story. I mean, that's kind of the crux of this thing, is it's really hard, and it takes a lot of journalistic legwork and time, and sometimes the stories, you can't get enough sources and you can't ultimately put it out, to actually publish something like what Ronan Farrow did with Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah, it takes months, takes a lot of work.
Months of work and digging and piecing it together and getting the sources and making sure it's vetted, making sure it's backed up and that it's gonna stand up to scrutiny. And you go through that whole process knowing the whole time that you may not get there. You may spend months on this thing that you think you've got, but you don't quite have enough to rise to the level of publishing in, say, the Washington Post. Instead, they wanted to take a sort of cheap shortcut and go with this op-ed that was completely unvetted, that was really written by the ACLU, but they stuck Amber Heard's name on it because if the ACLU just wrote some generic thing about Me Too, of course they're not gonna publish that. So they used Amber Heard's celebrity to get this ultimately published without ultimately vetting the claims. And now that it, has been found to be defamatory by a jury in Virginia, they have nothing to say about it. And there's no consequences whatsoever. There's very little curiosity in what happened here or what the relevance might be or how they might handle this going forward from any other corners of the media. So it's one more sign of WaPo in disarray, which I know you're going to get to.
Yeah, I'll get into more of that in my monologue, but I do think it is really worth just, rehashing this because obviously this captured the nation's attention. Some people may be never familiar with how an op-ed and all that other stuff works, but you see here the true view into the nonprofit industrial complex, reputational laundering by celebrities, the way that narcissists can use that in order to wash their own image and bolster it, and frankly, for her own career. We all know this was great for her career until it wasn't, until a lot of the truth all came out, and how the mainstream media, the Washington Post, the New York, and if you think this doesn't happen over the New York Times op-ed page, I don't even know if I should say this, but whenever the whole Joe Rogan thing was going on, the Times reached out to me before, and I was like, yeah, whatever. But I was like, hey, okay, I'm here. I actually know him. I was a guest on his show. I'm like, let me write a piece defending Rogan. They said, we're passing on this one. So, I don't have the ACLU behind me. By the way, the ACLU, as people who were supporting free speech, they probably should have gone and pitched something like that, but they're not going to do it.
This is the whole other thing that's so sad is the downfall of the ACLU, which is this, storied institution which has pissed everybody off at some point.
Used to, yeah.
I mean, really just principled in support of civil liberties, freedom of speech, and now they literally stand for nothing. And that part is truly sad. Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.